Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk something about grammar. When we talk about verbs, there are 5 properties which we must consider: voice, mood, tense, number, and persons. And today we are going to talk about voice, that is active voice and passive voice. So let's start with the session today. Voice is always judged on the basis of the relationship between a verb and its subject. Whether the subject is performing the action or whether the subject is receiving the action depends on what the type of voice is. So basically there are 2 types of voices, active voice and passive voice. When we talk about active voice, we mean that the subject performs the verb. The subject is doing the action. While when we talk about passive verb, the subject is receiving the action. Let's look at an example here. Alan picked up a heavy stone. Let's try to mark what is the subject, verb and object here. Alan is the subject. Picked is the verb. And what is the object? What did Alan pick? The action here goes to the object, heavy stone. Alright, so this sentence is an active voice because here the subject is doing the work. Alan picked, he is doing the work here. Come to the same sentence in passive voice. A heavy stone. Now a heavy stone here becomes the subject. Was picked up. Now picked becomes the verb by Alan. Now Alan here becomes object. So what has happened under passive voice is a heavy stone was picked up. The subject is receiving the action, so it was affected by the action. Whereas under active voice, the subject is performing the action. So that's the basic difference between active voice and passive voice. In active, the subject performs, whereas in passive voice, the subject receives the action. It is okay to use any kind of voice, whether active or passive. The meaning will remain the same. But you must know 3 very important rules to change from active into passive. The steps of conversion we'll do later. Let's first understand what are the things you have to remember. Do not change the tense of the verb. Whenever we are making active into passive voice, the passive sentence always has a helping verb which will tell us which tense is denoted, whether it is present tense. So when the tense is present, we basically use words like is, am, are. Again, that depends on the subject, whether it is singular or plural. If it's past, we use words like was, were, or if it's perfect tense, we use words like has, have, had. The second rule is that the verb should always agree with the subject. There is a concept of subject-verb agreement, wherein the verb has to agree with the subject in terms of singularity or plurality. The third rule says that only transitive verbs can be changed into passive voice. Now, what are transitive and intransitive verbs? Transitive verbs are those verbs where the action is transferred to an object. Now, if in a sentence you have an object like this particularly mentioned, which means the action of this verb is passing on to an object, so such a verb is called as a transitive verb. Only such sentences can be converted into passive voice. Now what happens when there is no object in the sentence? In that case, the verb will be termed as intransitive. Let's take a small example on intransitive. Consider this sentence, Alan picked up. Now this sentence is grammatically correct because it has a subject and a verb. But this verb does not have an object. So in sentences where there is no object and I do not know where this action is passed, such verbs are called as intransitive. So therefore, the golden rule of active-passive voice is only those sentences which have a transitive verb will be converted into passive voice. Intransitive verbs will never be converted into passive voice. The first step of converting is that you have to change the position of subject and object. So when I interchange, now this will become a song, now becomes new passive subject, and Sherlyn now becomes new passive object. So what have I done in the first step? Just interchange the position of the subject and object. The second step is now I have to use a helping verb which will correspond to the tense of the active voice, right? So if I look at this sentence, Sherlyn sings a song. This sentence tells me that it is in present tense. So I have to use helping verb of the present tense. But then again I have to look at the subject and accordingly use the form of the helping verb, which means I can use either is or am or are. Now if I look at the subject, a song, it's a singular subject. So I will write here is. Now when I use this helping verb in the same tense as an active voice, the tense will not change. It will remain the same. The third rule is change the verb in its third form. Whatever be the verb form here, the main verb will be changed into third form, that is V3 form or past participle form. So I have to use the third form. I will write here sung. Now the next rule says that I have to use a preposition before the object, and the preposition to be used in passive voice is the word by. So I have to mention here by. So it tells me by whom it was done. Now the sentence becomes a song is sung by Sherlyn. And the last step here is to change the pronouns. Now here I do not have, I am directly using someone's name. But if I have to change it in pronoun, or if I am using pronouns, then how do I change? Let's look at that example. So if my sentence here is she sings a song, it's a pronoun. Then how will this pronoun change in passive voice? It will become her. So she will become her, he will become him, they becomes them, we becomes us, etc. So now the entire passive voice will be a song is sung by her. Now these were the basic rules of changing active into passive. Now let's look into some of very different points where you have to take care of certain aspects before changing active into passive. Now while changing active into passive, we know that object becomes the subject. But what if a sentence has got two objects, a direct object and an indirect object both? Then what do? Well, it doesn't matter. Whichever object you take as subject, it really doesn't matter. But let's see how to change such a sentence. Have a look at this sentence. The teacher gave the books to students. Now here the teacher is the subject. Gave is the verb in the past form. So here we need to look at the tense also, because this is the most important thing. Then have a look at the objects. There are two objects here, direct object and indirect object. Direct object will tell us what. It will answer the question what if asked to verb. So if I ask the teacher gave what, then the answer comes as the books. So whatever answers the question what will become direct object, and whatever answers the question to whom will become indirect object. Therefore, here we have books as the direct object and students as indirect object. Now both these objects can come at the place of subject in passive voice. So this one sentence can be changed into two ways. First is the books. Now if you look here, the direct object has come first, were given. Now as per the rule, the tense should remain same. So if it is in past, for past I will use the helping verbs like was or were. Therefore I am using were. And why were? Because my subject is plural. Here the books is plural and therefore I am using were. Given. Now this gave, this verb has taken V3 form of itself. So this verb will change into V3 form. This will apply to the tense in the active voice and then to the students. I can have my indirect object here and at the end of the sentence I will take the subject here. So the subject, that is before it, I will use the preposition by. So this is how I have changed in passive voice. Let's look at the second alternative. The students were given books by the teacher. Now here the students is indirect object. I can take it first. Were given. Again, were given. Given is the V3 form of the verb. Why were? Because students also is plural here. So I am using were. Given books. Now I have taken direct object as it is at its place by the teacher. The teacher, which was subject here, now becomes the object. The preposition by will be used. The next case is whenever there is a verb with preposition or adverb, then what do you do? Very simple. Do not separate the verb and preposition or adverb. Keep it together just as it is in active voice. Let's look at this example. He wrote to me. Now here the verb is with a preposition to. Whenever you are changing it in passive voice, this combination will not get separated. They will always be together. The verb will change in the third form, but the preposition will always follow that verb. So therefore here, if you look here, it becomes he. Now let's do the rough work. Subject, this is object, this is verb and with a preposition. So how do you change it? This subject will become object here. Then change the object to subject. So me will become I as subject in passive voice. Was written. Was is used because this is in past. So I'm going to use the helping verb like that. I was, because I is a singular subject. So was, this becomes the helping verb. The verb wrote will always take the V3 form in passive voice and the preposition to will be as it is. I am not changing its place. So write to will become written to. The same is the case with adverb. Here again, they walked over many floors. Let's do the rough work first. They become subject, many floor is object, walked is verb. Let's start. So they will become them as object. Many floors will become subject here. So this becomes subject. Were, I am using were because it is in the past tense and many floors is plural. So were is the helping verb used here. Walked will take the V3 form. And then after the V3 form, I am going to use this adverb over. So walked over will be walked over in passive also. And then obviously we have the word by. It is a compulsory word. Now let's look at how to deal with infinitive verbs. That is a verb which has to before it. For example, to call, to pamper, to read, to walk, to spend, etc. So whenever a verb is preceded by to, it is called as an infinitive. So how do we change that? Let's see. It is time to call the participants. Now this sentence is a little different because there is no subject here. For a sentence to be changed into passive, the compulsory thing is to have an object that we already have. So let's do this one. It is time. Now this part will remain as it is. We are not going to see this because this is not a subject. It is extra information. Next, let's move on to verb and object. Now if you look here, to call is the combination of to and verb, and the participants is object. So as per the rule, the object will come first, like as in subject. So I'm going to take this here and make it a subject, and then look here, to be called. So what am I doing with the verb here? Of course, I am making the main verb in the V3 form. The call becomes called. The to will remain as it is, and I am going to attach a new word here, be. So to call will become to be called, to pamper will become to be pampered, to walk will become to be walked, and so on. So with infinitives, we attach this new word here, be. Let's look at the second example. Children like parents to pamper them. Now children like parents. Now who is doing what? Parents become the subject here. Action is pamper and object is them. Now look here, this object them actually refers to children. So when I take this object as subject, I can use children as it is. So this is my subject here. Children like to be pampered. Now what have I done to the verb? Pamper becomes pampered. To will remain as it is, and I have added a new word here, be. Then take the subject as object here, parents. So this becomes my object, and the word by will be used in between. So the passive of the sentence becomes children like to be pampered by parents. Now when we talk about imperative sentences like commands, requests, suggestions, advice, the rules are really different. They are not as per what we have talked about till now. They can be changed into a little different way. Now look here. Whenever we are talking about imperative sentences, we generally use the word let. The sentence will always start with the word let. In imperative, there is no subject. But let's see how to change these. Open the window. Now open here is verb, the window is object. So let's change this. I'll start with let. The object will become the subject here. Be opened. Now what has happened to the verb? It has come as V3 form here, and the word be is added extra. Next, do not pluck the flowers. Now this is a negative, so I'm going to start with let. The flowers here will become subject. Not will be as it is. Pluck will become plucked, and an extra word be will be added here. Look at the next one. Let him sing a song. Now I can assume him as subject here. So I can also say let a song. Here the object will become subject. By him. Here the subject will become object. Sing will become V3 form sung, and added an extra word here, be. Look at the last one. Work hard. Now it's just 2 words. How do you change it? So here you have to see what is the sense of the phrase or the sentence. If it's a command or if it's an order, then you can write you are ordered to, or you are suggested to. Or if it's a request, well, generally in requests we have words like please or kindly that we'll see in the next set of examples. But if you look at this sentence, work hard, it is like giving an advice to somebody. So whenever you are giving an advice, I can start the sentence like you are advised to. So I can have my sentence something like you are advised to, and this whole thing will appear as it is. Now in this case, we are not going to change the verb form, or we are not going to put extra words like be or by. This is a really different case. Let's see some more examples now. Look at this sentence. Get out of my sight. This gives a sense of order or command. So when I begin to form this sentence in passive voice, I can start you are ordered to, and then the same thing as it is in passive voice. Get out of my sight. Again, no change in the verb, no change in the subject object, nothing at all. Look at the next one. Please wait for me. Now words like please or like kindly, they tell us that it's a request. So I can start the sentence as you are requested to. Again, the same thing exactly here. Wait for me. Similarly, kindly help me. Now this kindly can be written as you are requested to, and help me will come as it is here. Now let's see some examples on indefinite pronouns as subjects. Indefinite pronouns are words like somebody, anybody, someone, anyone, no one, nobody. means you are not specifying a definite person. It's like indefinite, right? So if we have such indefinite pronoun as a subject, then what do? Then it is not necessary to take it in the passive voice. Generally, we take subject as an object with the use of by. But here we need not do that. Now let's try to change these sentences. I've already marked what is subject, object and verb here. And let's see what happens. Subject is somebody, has stolen is the verb with helping verb, and my books is object. So let's interchange the position and see. My books will now become subject. Has will become have. Remain the same because the tense has to remain the same. So instead of has, I am writing have here because now my subject is plural. Here my subject was singular. So because of the plural subject, I have changed it to have, and then the third form of the verb. And if you remember the tenses, with have, we always have the third form and we use the word been. Whenever there is has, have, had, we'll always use the term been. Now coming to the object in passive voice. I am not taking, or I may take by somebody, but even if I don't write here by somebody, it is still accepted. So this part here is optional because I have an indefinite pronoun here. I may omit it. I may not write this. It's okay. Come to the next one. People will soon forget it. Now people here is subject, that is again indefinite pronoun. Will is the model helping verb and forget is the main verb. It is the object. So let's do it. So it will become subject here. Then will remain as it is because this is the helping verb. And whenever we use models, we will use the word be. Soon will be as it is. We are not going to change the place. And forget will become forgotten. Now again here, I have not mentioned any object here. I can write by people, but this is optional to me. I may omit. Next, has anybody answered your question? Okay, now here anybody again is indefinite pronoun. I can leave it. I may not write here as object. So I can have has, because it's a question. So has will not change its position because passive voice also has to sound like a question. So the question word will remain as it is. Your question, the object here will become subject here. Because I am using has, I will use the word been, and answered will come in the third form here. Now another option of making the sentence could be, has your question been answered by anybody? I can even write like this, but again I may not write this. This is optional. That's all in this session of active passive voice. This session explained you the general rules of changing into passive voice. And in the next upcoming videos, I will teach you separately how to change tense wise, how to change present tense, past tense and future tense separately so that you get your concepts right. But remember to stick to active voice always because it is less erroneous and you will be more confident with active voice than with passive voice unless you have learned the rules properly. Take care of yourself. Goodbye and see you in my next video of changing active into passive for present tense.